Hello, and welcome back to Rails Optional. I'm Nicole Eisdorfer, HR philosopher and recovering corporate person. And today, we're going straight at one of corporate's favorite party tricks, personality tests at work. If you've ever been four-lettered, color-coded disk strengths or had a manager explain your frustration away with, oh, that's just your type talking, this one is for you. We are asking when these tools actually help you know yourself, some of the common misconceptions about them, and when the tools become a sorting hat with less fun branding and real world consequences. I'm pulling from MBTI, Clifton Strengths, VIA, Enneagram, and all of the other alphabet soup, plus Deb's lived experience of being labeled into a career path and then burning out inside a system that swore it cared about the whole person. We get into reliability, validity, and how preference is not the same as competence without turning this into a stats lecture. It's a little bit of a stats lecture, but it's not a bad one. By the end, you'll have a simple robot test for spotting when personality is being used to excuse a systems problem, and hopefully a little more compassion for yourself if you've started to feel like your type or your personality is the problem instead of the infrastructure around you. Thanks again for joining us.
We still believe in the reason we started. It can't be work that makes the world less guarded. We were never numbers, never machines. We were the pulse behind the dream.
That's amazing. That's a lot of people. And also, I feel tired thinking about that. Right. We are extroverting. Here we are extroverting today, which leads us directly into our topic today. I have taken basically the full menu of every personality test that's out there. I mean, the ones we all know, MBTI, Clifton Strengths, VIA, Enneagram, DISC, all the value sorts, including several that don't exist anymore. Like just things that were trialed for a while and then they like disappeared again. And um, weird things like Fire OB. And I mean, if there's a personality assessment and someone will sell it to me, I will take it. I am like the most.
Did you take Spark Type? Did you do Spark Type?
Yes. I don't remember it, but I took it.
I'm a stage performer.
I do not remember. It didn't resonate and I don't remember. Um Insights was the one we used at Vail. I don't know. I've got so much personality information about myself that if Claude ever truly wanted to take over at least my life, it totally could because I've dumped it all in there and I make it analyze against itself. So some of them have genuinely helped me understand myself, and others of them have helped me understand why reliability and validity are important in assessments.
Mhm.
And some of them were just for fun. I mean, I one of my favorite quizzes that I remember from the Cosmo personality quiz days was what the shape of your lipstick says about you. I don't remember what the answer was, but just the idea that the way you put your lipstick on caused a specific shape and it said something about your personality traits. And that was just this fascinating idea to me. I've played around deeply in astrology, like which you are well aware of. And for the people who are in Joy Prompt Club, they have access to my insanely in-depth astrology bot from Claude. By the way, Claude has some things to say about this week. So if you're all feeling wonky this week, it could be the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune in Aries, which is like civilization wide put up or shut up sort of reckoning energy. There was an eclipse, a solar eclipse in Aquarius. The Mercury is going retrograde here in a few days.
Holy
So,
crap,
if you
Lola!
whether you believe or you don't believe, those are the things that are happening in the planets.
Like we don't have enough shit going on in the world right now. Like, let's
I
add
mean,
some
and
planetary
it's
things, collisions happening
Lunar
there
New
too.
Year, Lunar New Year, Fire Force switching over. Yeah, there's a lot going on. So you're feeling tired, it might be that, or it might be the collapse of civilization. Who knows? When I when I when I ideated on this episode, The cold opener title it gave me was, "Am I a 6 or is it capitalism?" And I don't know enough about Enneagram to actually get the joke, but it was funny. So so yeah. So for those of you who have joined us, I see 3 little eyeballs now. Hi, I am Nicole. I do things, I know things, and I don't know. I play around with ideas all day, every
And she
day,
doesn't
which
drink.
totally
She knows
tracks.
things and
And I don't
she doesn't drink.
I drink water. Um, and joined on as every episode by Deb Haas, who can introduce herself because she's a grown up.
I give that appearance of it. Sometimes I can fake it pretty well. Hi everyone, I'm Deb Haas. I am the founder of I don't know why that came into my head. The founder of The Unexamined Mind and AI Confidential, where I train women 40 plus to make AI their biatch. And yeah, 24 years in corporate, most of it at Accenture. And yeah, I just can see what a craptastic situation we're in right now so much more clearly than I ever could when I was in the middle of it. So found Nicole,
Yeah.
she
And
found me, we connected through LinkedIn, and the rest is history.
they're gonna write books about it someday. We'll see if we're the villains or not. Uh so So, okay, we're here today. We're going to talk about personality at work. And, is it legit? Does it have an actual use? How should you use it if you do use it? How should you avoid it if you are considering using it? Is it all just I don't mumbo jumbo, right? Are we
Hickey.
looking at actual science or are we looking at, you know, just a sorting hat with a better branding? So, I mean,
Were
I
you
don't even
going to
trust the
drop
sorting
that one
hat.
in there? Was that one that you had waiting to drop in there, the sorting hat with better branding?
The sorting hat piece was in there because my prep did have a sorting hat trap as a title, but the better branding was all me. Um, I also can tell you that I've taken all the sorting hat quizzes too.
Wait.
Additionally,
Don't tell me you're a Ravenclaw, right?
I am not. Well,
Are
it
you a
depends.
Hufflepuff?
So I am a Hufflepuff. According to Pottermore, that is actually the only one that has ever sorted me into Hufflepuff. Everything else has sorted me into either Ravenclaw or occasionally Slytherin. No one has ever sorted me into Gryffindor, which is completely unsurprising. I actually stop to think before doing things. Um, which takes us into MBTI. So, MBTI is probably the most common of all of the corporate, you know, what's your type sort of assessments. That's the right word. And it's also tremendously misused and misunderstood.
Oh my god, and
So,
I know that for a fact.
well, and I mean, actually, fun fact, I just had Deb take the MBTI step 2 this past week. And so MBTI is kind of interesting. There's like your core type that is just sort of the step 1 test. It's a smaller group of questions. And then as they started doing research on this, they discovered that your preferences are not they don't exist in isolation, right? So
Yeah.
you see this when people talk about MBTI type, and you can actually almost always pinpoint who has been improperly prompted and improperly trained by the way they talk about it. Because you'll hear things like, at home, I'm an introvert, but at work, I'm an extrovert. No, my dear, your preference isn't different. And this is the thing is like it's not a skill. It's not a
It's not a
way of
label either,
being.
is it? It's
It's
not
a
like a
preference.
it's a preference. As you as a
Yeah.
human
And
being, this
so
is how you prefer to operate in the world.
yeah. Well, and it's how you prefer to operate in the world without outside constraint. So if you liken it, the preference we're most familiar with is handedness, right?
Yep.
People have a preference for their right hand or their left hand. Just because I prefer my right hand does not mean if I am juggling a child on my right hip and a bag of groceries, I can't scrawl what passes as my signature now with my left hand. I can totally do that. It's not my preference, but I can do it.
Yeah.
And telling you that I'm right handed does not tell you anything about my skill playing tennis or my skill writing with my handwriting. It doesn't tell you anything about my skill. It just tells you that my dominant preference is to use my right hand. And that's where people go wildly wrong on these
Well, you
preference
look at it, there's
inventories.
like you look at it and it's a set like when you're in a corporate world, it's a label that you get slapped with, and then decisions are made and like things are like I remember when I was labeled INTP and I supposedly was good at technology and this other stuff, whether I was or not. I was an HR assistant at the time, and all of the HR business partners suddenly were looking at me differently, like, "Oh, Deb knows technology stuff. Let's throw this stuff at her." And I was like, "Yeah, it's great that I'm getting this stuff now, but what?" Like, it made no sense.
Yeah, and this is exactly what I'm saying. Like you cannot mistake a preference for competence. And that's one of those like key misuses. So, one of the things we're going to talk about throughout this episode is that when a company is using these tools as an act of care, as an act of a way of helping you understand yourself.
Yeah.
Um, I hear buzzing.
I I'm sorry, it's fucking predators calling me, man, on my watch. Matthews has something to say. Turn it around. Maybe what we believe to be harbingers of doom are really the destiny we didn't know we needed.
I love that map. Oh, there I had the chat covered. That was so silly.
Iris is coming in hot today. Hot. Feeling hot.
Yeah, I
Ooh.
but in the chat room before we went live, I had to confess to Deb that I have like negative 50 energy today. So, um I am and this is actually an MBTI piece, right? I spent my entire morning peopling, and I spent a large part of that time in sort of this extroverted feeling realm, like handling other people's feelings.
Mm.
And I've got more of it coming later today. It is my weakest preference. My dominant preference is introverted feeling. My MBTI type is an INTP, um, which you might have just heard Deb say she was typed as originally. And when we did her step two, we step two has more questions and has been ex- exposed or benefited from increased research, and it also gives you under each of the preferences there are these 5 facets, and you can have them out of type. And the reason that happens is because, or the theory of the reason that happens is because we have things that affect our preferences all the time. Like if I prefer to use my right hand, but my right hand is broken, I will eventually learn to use my left hand.
Mhm.
And if I never regain access to my right hand, like over time, my preference will start to look like someone who uses their left hand. And so, as an example, my preference is introversion. However, I have one thing out of type, and it's the expressive facet. And so I'm very talkative. And most people, when they meet me, believe me to be an extrovert. And some of that is because in large social situations, I have my little extrovert mask because I have learned that that's how one gets along. I extrovert through ideas. And so when talking about ideas can become very animated and very passionate and very excited. And that's really a piece. Oh, Matt, the 5 dysfunctions or 7 dysfunctions, some number of dysfunctions of a team, I'm too tired to remember the number now, is really, really good work. Lencioni has some really cool things, but I'm less familiar with those assessments, so I'm going to leave that alone. Um, so,
You did
expressive
my
introvert.
thing last night, and then you realized that you're
And then we did your thing, yeah. And so I've known my type for a long time. I've done a lot of deep work in it. I did a certification and I had to do a lot of work with it. But when we did Deb's, she went through and like did all these things, and she had several things out of type, and she had this sort of midline results between both extrovert and introvert, and in the thinking and feeling preference category. Thank you, Matt. Um, yeah, that's the thing, is they're not rigid. And a lot of these other things that we use are not rigid either. They're just used poorly. And so we don't we don't use them in the correct way. So, if HR is like keeping track of your type and identifying opportunities that match that type, that's kind of silly. I mean, like it's a lot silly, frankly. But
That is really silly, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, most companies have moved past that at this point,
Yeah,
partly
true.
because they've all been sued to oblivion for using assessments in a way they're not supposed to. Um, I can never remember the name of the company that did it, and we'll come to this later. But the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, the MMPI, which is literally used to diagnose like psychosis
Psychosis. Yeah.
and
I'm like, that is
schizophrenia, and like they there is actually a company that used it for hiring.
it's
And
500 freaking questions, isn't it? Isn't it 500 or
oh,
300 or some ridiculous number?
super long.
Yeah.
But it is so. Let's pivot. Let's talk about reliability and validity. These are those like two concepts that get drilled into your head in grad school. And unless you've taken a stats class or a psychometrics class or some sort of class on assessments, you probably don't remember them. And if you haven't spent your life obsessed with personality assessments, you may not remember them either. Um, but reliability is when you take an assessment and then you take it again and you get the same results. And
Yes.
you take it again, you get the same results. So you get the same results every time you take it, or similar results every time you take it. That is one of the big problems um, with most of these DISC, MBTI. You don't get consistent results,
Nope.
and some of that comes down to poor prompting. Like, one of the things when I prompted you was to remember that this is context agnostic. You're not to think about it like when I'm tired this, and when I'm excited this, or when I like the idea
It was
this.
really, I looked at the two words and I picked the one that felt more like me or felt like I preferred it or felt happier or felt better. I don't even know how to describe it, but it was literally looked at the two words. Oh, I like that one better. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and
Oh,
that's literally what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go
yes.
with your, like, first instinct. And so you have this result that's a little bit different than the one that you had originally sort of indexed on, but you've been reading on it and learning about it, and, like, some of the things that didn't make sense before are starting to make sense, right?
Well, I will tell you. So I spent some time with Kalani, you know, because that's my first go to, when I don't have a human who knows what the fuck they're doing, like, when I don't have Nicole right there, like waiting on my every text, then I have to go to Claude. Of course, my
Are you are
default
you
is
you aware that I expect you to wait on my every text? Like, as evidence from my, "Hey, my Claude code broke, fix it, Deb."
that was brilliant, by the way, because then you came back later and you're like, oh, I figured it out. And I knew you would because you're fucking brilliant. So
Mm.
I messed around with Claudia a little bit, and of course, like any LLM, it's gonna be like, "Oh, this is what makes you super unique," and, I'm like, "Yeah, whatever," more. And then, I was like, and then I did my usual turn, like, radical candor, "What's missing that you
Mhm.
haven't told me? What is the part of this that you're not mentioning?" And it was fascinating to see, like, INTP. I think I wanted to be INTP. Like, I think that was just it looked like a really cool type or whatever, but it never really felt like me. And when I was reading some of the things around ENTP, I was like, holy shit, this is me. Oh my God, it's describing exactly how I operate, like my preferences, like, and I've identified myself as an introvert forever because peopling or
Well,
energy vampires were like, oh, but it really is a combo of my ENTP and my ADHD, which, the executive function is going, oh, mercy, mercy.
and you did have several things out of type, like whether you went with the E or the I. With ENTP, like when I'm looking at the adjectives, it was a receiving, reflective, quiet ENTP. Oh, well, actually, you have so many adjectives, I would have to keep going. You're a receiving, reflective, quiet, compassionate, accepting, tender, planful ENTP. I have a lot of stuff out of type, and I've only got 3 adjectives.
Yep.
So, like, good luck remembering those words. I can't
Yeah,
remember my 3 words,
I won't
so
remember any of
may
those.
the odds be ever in your favor.
Yeah, but I mean, it
Okay,
explained it
so
because I asked how many ENTPs are in the world, and it said that it's a pretty small type, like
mhm,
like that
like
type, and then
4% or something like that.
and when it's women, it's even less, which I was
Yeah,
like, well,
because
that
the T's
explains
are
quite a bit.
well, and we talked about that TF preference being the only preference that's gendered, um, statistically.
Yep.
So, okay, so reliability, right? Get the same measurement every single time. And we're going to use a scale to explain this. So, if you got on your scale and every single day it told you weighed 75 pounds, you'd be like, wow,
Like, I
wow. But it's telling you the same thing every single
yeah,
time,
yeah,
right?
it's like,
That's
wow.
reliability.
Yep.
But it's not validity,
No.
right? It's wrong. But that actually let's switch this a little bit, right? Say you were getting on your scale and it was telling you 75 every single time, but
Yep.
you were using it to tell you the weather. It's not valid to tell you the weather. It's valid to tell you a weight, and it can
A
give you
mass
the weight
measurement.
incorrectly depending on if it's calibrated or not, right? So it's poorly calibrated if it's giving you the wrong number, and it's not valid if you're using it for the wrong thing. So that's reliability, validity, calibration. Three very technical terms. And the thing that I like about MBTI is that they publish all of their data. I have a manual like this thick that has all of that data on it. And they say in the manual, they say in all of their materials, all of the trained facilitators who have been trained by them all know that it is not valid for selection purposes.
Yep.
But a lot of people have access to the assessment. I did the training because I was curious, which is unsurprising. That shows up in my strengths everywhere. But I could have just had access to the assessment through my educational credentials.
Mm.
And so it's very easy to get access to the assessment and be able to give it and not know what you're doing in um can we just AI to write the books now? Iris.
I'm just
I just
telling
got
you,
this friend my chat.
speaking as someone who's been a large organization in HR forever, and about how many times these assessments get pushed out and how many people do them, and like how many people are actually trained to deliver some of these things, you kind of got to wonder,
Oops.
like,
I'm like breaking.
if they understand the nuances for it. And that combined with how companies are misusing them is pretty freaking scary. Like, it
Yeah.
really is. It's pretty freaking scary.
All right. So let's focus in on like actual takeaways. So,
Okay.
listeners, your type describes your default gear. It does
Mm.
not describe your ceiling.
Mhm.
So just because you don't have a preference for extroversion does not mean you cannot extrovert. Just because you have a preference for thinking does not mean you cannot be compassionate or empathetic. Just because you have a preference for perceiving versus judging does not mean you cannot make a decision.
Yeah.
So, when you see that, I mean, I've even been guilty of making this joke, right? Like P stands for procrastinators. That's really unfair, right?
But it's so
So,
funny.
yeah, well, that's why I keep saying it, even though it's unfair and untrue. All right. So, it's your natural state, not a ceiling. If your company is using it to help you understand how to talk to each other, great. If they're using it to decide who gets a career opportunity, or
Who
if they're
gets
using it to
promoted, who gets to be a
explain,
manager of
yeah,
other people or whatever. Yeah.
or if they're using it to explain why you're upset about something, right? And I've seen that more with DISC than I have with MBTI. But DISC, you're like you see people with this high C, and they're like, oh, they're just resistant to change because they're a high C. What? Like so it's like, no, maybe they're resistant to change because the change you're proposing doesn't make any sense.
It
Like, why
it
are you
almost seems
using
like it's
personality?
we're using the whole thing like in the world that we're in right now, we have to do faster, speedier, blah, 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 blah. So it's easier to slap these tags on so that we can move on and get the shit done that we need to get done to make the company money. And we're not even considering the potential Even a damage might be a little bit excessive, but what it's doing, like, I mean, because I look at myself and I, I'm amazed that I lasted for long as I did when I look at what my type and like I'm an ideas person, but I was in a very rigid kind of whatever. And I was happy for the longest time with just 20% of my time getting to do the things that I love doing. And then 80% of the time I was working in things that were not my preference. And it explains to me so much how I ended up burnt out after
Mhm.
of long of like not paying attention to it.
Well, and then there's also like these other aspects. There's your preferences, but there's also your strengths and your values, right? Which are sort of the next things we're going to talk about. So the
Oh,
most
yay.
popular strengths inventory is Clifton Strengths. I can't speak to reliability and validity because those are solidly held behind a paywall. Gallup is pretty notorious for not sharing those kinds of pieces of data. And I think the other thing that's a real confounding factor in those, like where you see people whose Clifton strengths will vary wildly from one instance of taking it to another, is it's mapping out how you naturally approach work when you're energized.
Mm.
And that requires that you know what it looks like to be
When you're
energized
energized. Yeah.
at work.
So it's almost like you have to take the test when you're in that energized state. And how many people
Or
actually end up
when you're
doing that?
doing work you love, right? When you're
That's
doing work you love.
and if you've been doing work that you just tolerate because you like the money.
Yeah, right? And so your strengths could be tremendously skewed by that. The prompting, I'm really unfamiliar with what a facilitator. I've never seen a facilitated Clifton Strengths session. So I
I never
suspect
have
it is
either.
significantly more in depth. I took it with the book purchase, and I have a friend, Bella, who's super into Clifton Strengths, and like just sort of, bye Matt, um, sort of really into that, and so that's how I'm somewhat familiar with it. But what I think is really interesting for me is across all of the strengths and all of the like. So there's Clifton strengths and then there's VIA, which are character strengths. They're
I
not
took that one earlier today. Did
yeah,
you see that? I took it.
I
Yeah.
yeah, I looked at the results.
Woo!
So, um did it not send you the results?
If it did, I didn't get a chance to see him yet. You know me. I'm like,
Okay.
what's going
I'll
on? What do you want?
I'll let you know. But my
Yeah.
my Clifton strengths and my VIA strengths, like they're very different kinds of strengths, right?
Hmm.
But what's interesting to me about both of my results is in both cases, 4 out of 5 of my top 5 cluster into one group, and then I have one other one. So on my Clifton, 4 out of 5 of my top 5 strengths are strategic thinking strengths, and one is a relationship building. On my VIA, 4 out of 5 are wisdom strengths, and one is a transcendence strength.
Hmm.
I don't know your top Cliftons, but I did look at your top VIAs, which were
My
fairness,
top deal was
teamwork,
fairness. Yeah.
honesty. Yeah, so fairness, teamwork, honesty, kindness, and humor. So you have 2 justice strengths, 1 courage strength, 1 transcendent strength, and 1 humanity strength. So you have like this really balanced profile of top strengths. And the thing that's fascinating to me about VIA, which I am much more familiar with than I am Clifton, is it's out of the positive psychology tradition. And
Mm.
so it is based on this idea that there's no negative strength. There's no problem with you, right? Like we talked about that last time that it's how do we look at who's thriving and get everyone to thrive?
Ah, yes. I love that, by the way. That was one of the best
Yeah.
little nuggets that you dropped on me a couple episodes ago. Bada bing. Oh,
Mm.
yes. That explained positive psychology. Like I was like,
Mm.
oh, that makes perfect sense now. And the way that people misuse it and mislabel it. And
Oh, you mean the toxic positivity nonsense?
yes.
My favorite video to look at what is toxic positivity and, how it's misused is a video Brene Brown put out, and it's got the little, like, fox up at
Yeah.
the top of the hole and the I think the little rabbit maybe at the bottom, and all I remember from it is, like, "At least," and you're, like, saying the thing, and then finally, like, it's like, "Do you want a sandwich?" And that's the line that stuck with me. And now when I find someone doing this sort of, toxic, like, oh, at least my instant response is, "Do you want a
You want a
sandwich?"
sandwich? Oh my god, that explains some comment that I saw on LinkedIn a long time ago when you said that, and I remember laughing at it because it just seemed like such a non sequitur, but it totally makes sense now, and I know the video you're talking about because I remember watching it going, "Oh my god." I remember watching it with a pit in my stomach because that's exactly what it was like working at my previous employer, was this feeling of like, you're not on board. You're not with the, you're not following along with it. Get with it. This is the way we're going. This is, like it or not, don't say anything that isn't totally positive for it. Cause if you do, you're a troublemaker. Your career will be limited. You will be labeled this. And then years later, you'll still be known as that. And it's like,
Yeah.
"Ugh."
Well, what's interesting to me is I've been incredibly lucky with my roles. And it's not so much like one employer versus the next. I mean, large corporations all have their mishigas, but the teams I've worked with have just gelled at like almost a soul level.
That's so
And so, I mean, when you go through layoffs and you have people you are deeply connected with, I feel like it hurts a lot more
Mhm.
than if you don't care about your team.
Yeah,
But
my last team was phenomenal. That lead my last lead was the best boss I ever had, and it was like all of these years in this company, and I finally got a boss who, like, gets it, who, like, lifts me up, who, like, is actively engaged in me getting better at what I'm doing, like, doing what she can to do that, and then it's like, "Oh, beep, not anymore." Yeah, no, I feel
yeah.
you on that.
Well, and it's interesting because like when you look at how these strengths things could be misused, right? Same kind of thing, right? Like who likes to scan the horizon, who finishes things, who builds relationships, who loves diving into data. And you can redesign work to some degree in partnership with the person by Iris,
Iris.
with the person who has had these assessment results, right? And you can say, "Hey, I see by your values or your character strengths or, whatever particular assessment it is, that it seems like you're energized when you do this kind of work. Does that feel true to you? And we have these 3 upcoming projects. Would one of these be interesting to you?" But you never just say, "Oh, hey, Deb's the data person. Let's give this to her."
No, oh gosh, yeah, and, here's the thing, like, the label gets put on you, and then management operates like that's the truth, that's the reality, and then decisions are made with that, and it's almost like even if you say something, if you're at a certain environment, it's not even gonna be heard because the
Yeah.
test scores say this, and the test scores know what they're doing as opposed to the human who doesn't really know what they're doing, which is
And
how it occurs with me.
most of these assessments, like when you're trained in prompting them, one of the things I know for sure MBTI, like they are very, very careful not to call it a test because a test has wrong answers,
Yes.
right? And
That
and
is
a
so
test has bad scores.
that's such a good framing. I never even thought of that. I
So,
never e
I think
this talks about our conversation last night about words and the power of words and what they mean and having the same meaning between people, and you're absolutely correct. Test puts a whole different aspect on it.
yeah. Well, and this is one of those, so if you're looking at how your company is using these things, if the organization doesn't change workload or headcount or decision rates or, the way that they work to help people use their strengths and not punish them for what doesn't show up in their top profile, it's really just a pretty veneer over the same extraction we've all been living with for the last 40 years.
It's a compliance
Again,
thing. It's like
yeah.
stamp of compliance.
No,
We followed the test, we
it's
did the thing.
It's not compliant. That where I see it used most often is actually like, we have low engagement scores and our teams are not cohesive. And so we need a team building exercise. And so it gets pulled in on that rivalry. Like people aren't getting along with each other. And we think it's because their personalities clash and they don't understand each other. And sometimes that really is true,
Yeah.
right? And understanding your preferences can be extremely helpful. And it's a way to not do the deeper systems work that
Mhm.
needs to be done. Like,
Oh,
I
it's a Band-Aid
here's
on a
my
gash.
yeah, so here's my example. If you have a sales organization
Mhm.
and you want your teams to be cooperative and you had a whole town hall about it and you're talking about cooperation as a core value and your CEO is like handing out freaking gold stars for people who appear to be cooperative. But your compensation and your performance structure don't change. So now you've got Jill, and Jill sells product A, B, and C really, really well. And she's less confident on products D, E, and F. But a lead comes into her inbox who is looking for product F. In a truly cooperative environment, she would hand that lead over to Jim 3 desks over, who specializes in product F, because that is going to give the customer the best experience and the company is going to win the contract faster and it's going to be better for the company.
Mhm.
But Jill's daughter's in college and her comp structure is tied to how much she brings in this quarter. And so she's not going to share that lead with Jim because she's a rational human being and the incentive structures are tied to the wrong things. And here's my like this I've been working on this disrupt HR talk and I was trying to think of a test that people could take home. And I don't think this is going to make it into the talk so I'm going to share it today. But if you like think of the person who is doing the thing that's derailing your change and you're so annoyed because
Mhm.
they're not being the cooperative person, they're not being the team player. Replace them with a robot in your head. And that robot can only do the things that your systems rationally programmed them to do. If that robot would generate the exact same behavior that the human you're annoyed at is, it is your systems, not your people. Robot test
Robot
for the win.
test. I like it. Wow. That makes me
And
think of
personality has
so
nothing to do with that.
it has absolutely nothing to do with that. That is fascinating.
Well, and now, like the other big category of things, they do it a lot in leadership development, are values sorts. And I love a good values sort. I mean, this was um really, really emphasized when we were doing some of the career coaching training and such in my grad program and just sort of some self-insight work. But I've also seen it used in leadership dev programs, like they used it at Vail for camp. And one of the interesting things about value sorts is you come out of it with a list of your top values.
Yeah.
Good Work has an interesting spin on this, or the Good Project is what it's called. I can drop links in show notes, but the Good Project has an interesting spin on this, where you go through and you do a value sort of your own values,
Mm.
and then you go through and do a value sort of your perception of your company's values. And
Your
when they
perception
don't
of their
match,
value.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah. No, not the words on the wall. Your lived experience of what you think their values are based on the
Oh.
behaviors you see every day.
Wow.
And now you see the danger of value sorts because a lot of companies love to talk about their values.
But they don't live up. Oh, I just got chills, woman,
Mm.
thinking of what that comparison would have looked like, the last 6 months that I was at my previous employer with the axe hanging over my head, and the 6 months I had to interview my replacement and train them and everything like that. Like, what my perception like, I had major cognitive dissonance. Like, oh,
Mhm.
and it was really I mean, I was posting about it to other people, and I was doing all this stuff, and I'm like, "Deb, just get over it. Just get over it." Like, and I couldn't get over it because it was like it
Wanna
was
go back
like
to
this
MBTI and I can tell you why?
Yes, please tell me because it literally I even though I knew I was gonna get dinged for sharing things publicly,
Mhm.
I was like, I cannot stay quiet about this because it feels like I'm rotting from the inside with
So
difference between what I thought I was like the company I thought I was working and the company's actual actions with how they're like it was so disparate.
mhm. So in MBTI, the thing that made me a true believer in MBTI, and there's this fantastic book by Natalie Quank called In the Grip. And so, you have your dominant function, which for both of us is, well, actually no, mine is introverted thinking, but yours is extroverted intuition.
Yep.
It's my secondary function, my auxiliary function. Um the hold on.
It was
I'm
her
not
book
doing
that
math
you were
live.
talking about, the woman that you really liked?
Yeah, no, but I'm having to do like math in my head.
Oh my god. I'm like, "What are you doing?"
Which
I'm like,
is
"I feel like I should be."
yeah, yeah, no. So introverted sensing would be your inferior function, and your tertiary function would be extroverted feeling. Introverted sensing is this sort of like quick tune in with your own body, and like you become very, very focused on internal symptoms, and hypochondriac sort of behaviors start to come in,
Okay, this
like
explains a lot.
physical breakdowns, like all of that.
You
The
mean getting
tertiary
sick
one,
every time before an opening night of any show that I was in, like always getting some sort of sinus infection was probably that? Is that what you're telling me?
yeah, yeah. Um, and then the other one, the other like the tertiary is extroverted feeling. And so, if you're trying to avoid introverted sensing, which with your history immediately prior to what happened, right? Like to this, you're going to be doing everything in your power to stay out of that. And so extroverted feeling is going to be the thing that you're like clinging onto. Extroverted feeling in a grip, in a shadow side expression, is this just sort of spewing of emotions, like anger, like
Oh my
outbursts,
god,
just
explains so
crying.
much of my last couple of months before I went on leave of like, it's you're just
So
describing it.
my type is INTP, right? That's my preferences are introversion, intuition, thinking, and perceiving. The inferior function for an INTP is extroverted feeling, which I just described as your third function. I had a rough decade, right? A lot going on with my son, just a lot like moving and like all of this stuff, right? Didn't process it and was not in therapy at the time, but I was trying. And I went to therapists because I found myself just bursting into tears out of nowhere. This statement, I checked myself into therapy because I was crying too much, might be the most INTP under long duration stress statement in existence, right? Because if your preference is for introverted thinking, right? You like your own internal logic, like everything needs to make sense.
Mhm.
And that has broken. You have lost access to that. And you are in your inferior function. You are living in extroverted feeling, which is the thing you are least comfortable with. And I mean, it's sort of bonkers in hindsight, but it was only when I learned about these inferior functions and, this sort of MBTI math that I was like, "Oh, that's fascinating. This has more to it." It's kind of like when I first learned about things in astrology beyond your sun sign,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Like,
I
the
was
things
like,
that you've been
"Oh,
sharing with
there's some
me are
interesting
like,
things."
"Oh my god, this explains so many other things." Like, it just makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, and but again, like, you wouldn't use any you're not gonna be like, "Oh, you have" I'm just gonna make something up right now. You have your North Node in Virgo in the 10th house. And so I know you're going to be a major perfectionist. And so I'm going to put you in the data analytics career. Like, this person might like self select.
This is the perfect juxtaposition, by the way, Nicole. This is the perfect, like, comparing, like,
Yeah, because you would
astrology
never
to
do that,
how
right? Like,
no, but that's how they use personality tests. Oh, girl, you
yeah.
just made it even clearer than you did before. Just absolutely fucking clear.
All right. So, like, now getting like super hooey, like, we started, I mean, my, that little joke that was like, am I a six or is it just capitalism? I did Enneagram. I have a friend who's super into Enneagram. My results are broken.
I
I
can't
have,
tell what
like
I am. I can't tell what I like.
which is actually apparently somewhat common for people with a thinking preference in MBTI.
Oh,
But yeah, no, mine, like my 6 and 1 are tied, my 7 and 5 are tied. And after, like, I went into Claude and it has all of this information about my personality types. And so I was like, okay, you have everything there is assessed about my personality. Help me decode this Enneagram because I don't, like, everyone's like always like, I'm a 1 wing 2 or
I'm like,
whatever.
what?
And I'm like, I don't, mine doesn't say anything about wings and it doesn't even tell me what I am. And like,
And of
what
course,
do I
that makes
do
me think
with
of
this?
pads, like whether pads have wings or not. Because I remember when they didn't, and it was like terror on my underwear bill. But just anyways,
Yeah, you're terrorizing people.
it's pretty.
So yeah, no, like I took it, right? Enneagram says there are 9 basic types. Each type has a core fear and a core desire, and then they have wings and subtypes that try to explain why you do what you do, right? My results, I had a tie between 6 and 1, and then 7 and 5 were right behind, and 8 was right behind that. So the translation I was able to take of it was that I'm an anxious planner, principled reformer, enthusiastic idea chaser, detached investigator, occasional challenger. And so, yeah, like, no, the software basically shrugged and was like, "Congratulations, you're a committee." And I was like, "What do I do with this?" Right? And
Can you imagine in a
and
work
so
environment getting handed that and being like, what?
yeah, like, what do I do with this? Like,
What?
what does this even mean? And on top of that, like, what business do you have in a work environment asking me about my core wounds and fears? Are you
That's
crazy?
that's one of the ones that I don't think this is where I okay, this is where I personally run into problems, Nicole. Like you and I have talked about this. So I love and hate people at the same time, and I can't help it. It's just who I am. I love human beings. They're my primary focus thing. And I actually feel it when people are, so I've learned a lot of coping mechanisms, like how to function in the space of being around people that are in sorrow, being around people that are grieving, and learned how to like deal with that. But all of these psychological things are so much on this cliff of, is this something that requires therapy? Is this something? And I don't think anyone, except for someone who's trained, can actually determine whether it does peel into that area of that. And the fact
Yeah.
dealing with this in a work environment where your living is dependent sometimes on these is kind of effed up.
Yeah, well, and we talked about MMPI earlier, right? Like that's a clinical tool. It's built to detect mental disorders. Courts themselves have treated it as a medical examination. Like using that in pre-offer hiring, like has triggered ADA issues in the past. Like, do not use that. Like, no one should have to tell you that, but just in case, don't use that. But then there's Big Five, and Big Five is appealing because it is one of the most researched, validated. That's the one that has the acronym OCEAN.
Yep.
I think it actually is terrible branding because, frankly, who wants to be told they're not conscientious, and who wants to be told they're not agreeable, and who wants to be told they're neurotic, right? I mean, like, I don't know who came up with it. I should know. I did know at some point because we studied it, but it is highly correlated with a lot of things that you need to not know about too. Like there's a lot of mapping on anxiety, mood, impulse control, and those are all tied to mental health, and they are all therefore tied to disability law. And someday we will have a functioning EEOC again, and you should probably not do that.
Well, it just points to me, it just points to the fact that these are not conversations that belong. Like, well, it explains a lot for because I have a personal belief that the reason why a lot of people are so miserable at work and I mean, besides the fact that we live in a fucked up system and everything else, is that we've made it painful and anxiety ridden to find out about ourselves. Like there's a negativity around, or not a negativity, but like I don't want to look at myself because it's going to be painful. And so
Mm,
any good that looking at yourself is kind of buried under all of this trauma or bad experiences with other things where you investigated yourself and it screwed you over at work or there's something else that happened. And so people like me, when I'm at a time where I'm like, I'm honestly have no idea where I'm going to go. I need to really start looking at what matters to me. What gives me energy? What do I love? And so many people are conditioned to not do that work or to avoid it like the plague because it occurs as this really negative thing. I don't even know if negative is even the right thing.
Well, it can cause cognitive dissonance, right? Because we all have a self story, right? We
Yeah.
all have an idea of who we are,
Yep.
and we have who we want to be,
Mm.
and we judge ourselves on our intentions, not our actions, right? This is human
Yeah.
nature,
Oh my God. We do indulge. Oh my God. Oh,
and so when you get disconfirming information, that's I mean, it's little t traumatic, but it is traumatic. And it requires processing. And that for me is actually the thing that most bothers me about personality tests at work because there isn't space or time or skill for that processing.
that's it, Nicole. That really is it. It's just this thing that we do to for our team building that we do, and now we've got a label on it, and now we know how we can work together, blah blah blah. But it's not like, oh, you just told me that this is about myself, and like, what does that mean about me? And what it like that's the processing that I did earlier today with Claude after talking with you
Yeah.
last night. But we don't do that, and in fact, I would say that that's discouraged to do that.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, also from a going back to a personality perspective, like people process in different ways and they need different amounts of time to do it. Like I am one of those people who, similar to you, like I will take the information and I will process it and I will like figure out what it means and
Mhm.
how I'm going to use it and where it integrates with what I already know and where it opposes what I thought I knew.
Yeah.
And, sort of process that. And then I want to come back and talk to the person who knows things. And that person is often gone because they were there to facilitate a one-day workshop.
And that's it.
Yeah, and it can be I mean, that's for me when you're so I think these tests can be evidence of care from a company, right? They can be evidence that a company cares about the way the team works together. They can be evidence that the company wants you to understand yourself. They can be evidence that the company trusts that your values are in alignment with their true values. And so there's no danger to them of you learning your values,
Right.
right? That can be really powerful. But in the environment we are in right now, I mean, we know that trust is at epic low levels unless you're that one company that seems to have found the like 12 happy people in the world. Um, Congratulations, manpower. Um, but it's just people need to be able to opt in. They need to be able to keep their own data. They need to be able to
Yeah.
decide what to share. And then the tools can feel like support. But mandatory participation, mandatory sharing in an environment of low trust is just truly a terrible idea.
It is.
And I mean, I know one of my previous jobs, we did DISC. This was a while back. And I know someone who lied his way through the entire assessment because he didn't trust that it wasn't going to be used against him.
Yep.
And if you think about what like some of the things on DISC are, like they track to conscientiousness. And it's it's like, wait a second. Like you want me to say I'm not conscientious?
It's friggin'
Like,
Big Brother is what it is. That's
well,
scary.
I mean, I you know how I am. I like to believe in good intentions. And
I
this
so
has a lot of potential to go really wrong. And so unless you are going to build the support and you are going to really, really focus on how you make this safe for people to participate in, for most companies, it's a terrible idea.
just
They're going to
stop
keep paying
doing it.
for it.
They are. They're
People
gonna
will
keep
keep
doing it.
charging.
Well, and then the ones that they do for like I told you, the one that I did with that company that I interviewed for, and they gave me this
Uh-huh.
huge like I didn't realize it was gonna be like 45 minutes long and whatever. So I went into it like this is something I need to get done. And then it was like, holy crap, these questions that they're asking me about how do I handle this kind of thing with this thing? And then I just get a note saying, yeah, we're not moving you further. And I get nothing else on it. I get no access to the test itself or the results or anything. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, that's super sus. When you are using assessments for recruitment and selection purposes, you have an extra high duty of care legally, right? Because you have to be able to show, if challenged, that you're not having a disparate impact. You have to be able to show, if challenged, that what you are assessing for is in fact directly related to the ability to perform the role.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you're talking about giving MMPI, or not, if you're giving MMPI, you're in trouble for ADA violations. But if you're talking about giving MBTI as an onboarding assessment, it doesn't measure skill. It doesn't. It's not. It actively says it's not validated for that purpose.
It's
Like
almost
that's
like
not going to
they're
hold
like
up in
peeking
court.
in on you. It's like, stop peeking on me. Stop being such a stalker. But it's also like, it's just wacky. Like it's, well, here's what I think most of the, so some of the lawsuits that we're seeing with some of like Workday and some of the other big ones, where it feels to me like the majority of humans, at least in the US, have learned that there's no effort to try and fight any of these things because they never win. The courts will, or the company with the big legal team and everything will always win. But it almost seems like we need more things like the guy who was like, "Hey, 40 some years old, and I keep getting told that, you know."
Oh, the Workday lawsuit? That's going
Yeah,
forward. Like,
yeah.
they're actually if I don't know if I think they're still recruiting, but I think it's workdaylawsuit.com. So for those of you who are over 40 who are listening, you can join that class action. Like, if you applied for a job in the last 3 years and you applied through Workday, and I don't know how you would have avoided that. I mean, I I
Can I tell
I
you?
I avoided it to a large degree because, like, when I see Workday as the application, I'm like, "I'm not doing this."
Can I tell you how well I've gotten to like I literally accidentally stumbled on the Spanish speaking version of a job that I was looking at, and the Workday form came up, and I did the whole thing in Spanish, even though I don't speak Spanish, because I knew the form so well from having filled it out so many freaking times. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the field where I have to do this. This is the field.
I mean, it's kind of bonkers. It's funny if and I am not paid by any ATSs or any HRISs or any of these
Neither of
programs.
us is. Neither of us are getting
But
any money from any of these
when
guys.
when I was in the market for a job, one of the indicators to me that the company actually cared about candidate experience is when they had either UKG or Greenhouse,
There you go.
because they were actually easy candidate experiences.
Well, there's also another one with Workday. If they took the time, because you can actually
Oh, yeah.
edit it. And
Oh,
they,
it's super and
once
it's
you
like
did,
Legos in
you
the back
signed
end.
in ahead of time. They didn't make you sign in ahead
Yeah,
of time, and they went right to the thing. Then I was like, oh, this is actually a recruiting department or a recruiting function that cares about the experience of the people that are
yeah,
applying. But those were like 1 or 2 out of 50,
yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, no, if you care more about your data that you're not even gonna analyze, I know I've worked in people analytics, then you care about your candidate experience, it says a lot, and some of us get to be picky. And so that's, where I landed on it. I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that crap anymore. But, I mean, Greenhouse is delightful. Like,
Yeah.
their whole experience is really delightful, and UKG has a really easy user experience as well. I've seen, like, one company that had it configured really funky, but my suspicion is that that was not a, like, UKG native
Yeah. It was
configuration,
something
that
that
it's something
they
that they
made it.
did special. Yeah, and I cannot understand why a company would deliberately make things harder. Although that's apparently one of the trends we're moving towards this year. Like, Culture Amp released all of their trends
Yep.
back in December, and this, like, the employee repelling proposition
Yes.
is
They're
like
going to
the
be
new
like
trend. I thought that
really,
was
yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they're gonna be honest about it, yeah, that'll work. Let's do it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's what I said. I'm like, I am all for honesty. I
Yeah.
think I was actually quoted in that report because I was like, thank God,
Wouldn't
tell
it
the
be nice if
truth.
we had some freaking honesty? Wouldn't that be, like, amazing if people were actually honest about what they wanted? Like,
Yeah.
life would be so much easier. It would be so much better if people said what they wanted instead of
Yeah.
dance around it and make it look pretty and try to make it look acceptable or anything like that. Just say that you want
Yeah.
someone who's going to be there like these times and then like this time and that occasionally you're going to have to do that. Just say it. Don't dance around it. Just be honest, please. That's all I had to
All right,
say.
Deb, let's go back to personality for 1 second. Like this is your one takeaway. The
Mhm.
question you should have is not what type am I? It's how can this information help me design my work and my boundaries? And how is my organization using this on their side of the power line?
Yes. Yes. And having visibility into the results. Like if you're not able
Yeah.
to see the results or something, that's like to me, that's a like ding, 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 ding. Like,
Oh yeah,
no,
no. At this point, if a company, I mean, if I were applying and a company was going to send me a pre-hire assessment, I would be screenshotting the living crap out of that thing. Like, I'm like everyone else. I have no trust, right?
yeah.
And it's there are so many of these assessments that like so much of our work in HR, we're just like placeholder. Let's run a pilot and see if it works, and they just stay.
Yeah.